So some of you might have seen my recent video on why my small business failed and how I used to get hundreds of sales to now maybe less than 5 a week. My key takeaway from that experience is just ultimately that maybe my interests and heart weren't really in the small business itself, but if you want to watch more about that video, you can watch it here. But in today's video, I wanted to discuss what I kind of learned from that experience, and if I were to start a new business today, what would I do that's different than before? So getting straight to the first point, I would have my small business just be more intentional about what it is. Currently, my small business on Etsy is mainly reliant on my brand as MtsRbls creating comics on Instagram, and anything I post on there as a merch item is pretty much what I just said. It's merch that supplements work I've already made on Instagram. So my small business is a merch store, but I feel like if I were to have a small business all over again, I would just kind of make it its own brand, separate from who I am as a comic artist. Like, there's a part of me that always kind of romanticizes this idea of having my own stationery shop, and maybe that's something I would do if I had the time and appropriate chapter in my life to do that. So my second point is, going back, I would have probably advertised my small business on places beyond just my own social media platform. I mean, the only reason why I don't really advertise it outside of my own social media platform, even to this day, is because it's really not something that I can see succeeding in a universal space. Usually people who come to my Etsy shop already know me through my Instagram comics, YouTube videos, or probably my published graphic novels. But if I were to host an ad of just like my succubus's mug or something, nobody in the general population is gonna know what that is unless if they've already followed me, seen my work from somewhere. So I feel like that type of advertising might be more of a waste of money. But going back to my first point, if I were to start a brand all over again, I feel like that would succeed more in some sort of universal advertising, where if I just put an ad on Google or have it as a video or ad on YouTube, people who generally have the interest in office supplies, stationery, paper products could gain interest in it, and they don't need to know who I am as MtsRbls. I would also do things like probably reach out to other small creators and sponsor them to promote my products as well and use it, because I find that there is a lot of positivity in influencer marketing. So I would probably lean into Instagram advertising as well as the influencer marketing, because when you use Instagram ads, people who are already clicking through their feed already have, again, those interests. And in a way, it's similar to influencer marketing, except now it's more of just a straight up ad that people will click through. And then lastly, if I were to promote this new brand or small business that I had, I would also create a new Instagram page for it separate from MtsRbls or my comics, and just utilize that as the place to advertise any new product launches, all of the examples of using the products, featuring other people using it, or just kind of showcasing what it's like to incorporate my brand or small business into your lifestyle. The only reason why I'm not doing that today is because I really just do not have the capacity for it, and like I said, I don't really know if my heart is fully into it, just because I know what I would probably need to do if I were to fulfill this business idea. Just because you know what it takes to create this business idea doesn't always mean you need to do it right now, especially if you don't have the capacity for it. But if I were to start my small business all over again from scratch, something that would have probably helped me was making use of a time blocking system such as AkiFlow, the sponsor of today's video. AkiFlow is for busy people like you and me who need more help staying organized and productive. So the cool thing about AkiFlow is that they focus on time blocking and time management in a way that it doesn't have to replace any of the calendars you've already been using. So first off, like I mentioned, you can integrate things like Gmail, Google Calendar, Slack, Notion, or Asana into your AkiFlow. So in AkiFlow, what makes it easy is you can create a list of all your different projects to categorize tasks within that they will all cumulatively show up in an inbox that you can then drag and drop within each day's schedule. The universal inbox is where if you import anything from all of your third-party apps, you can just drag and drop those things into your calendar, or you can just create your own tasks. There's also a command bar feature on the top where you can capture and manage tasks a little bit more efficiently. So one thing that's really cool about Akiflow is they have this thing called rituals where you can do daily planning and daily shutdowns, where you can reflect on the things that you got done and see what you accomplished for today and what is left pending. For anyone who is new to it, you can always do a one-on-one onboarding call with them to ask any questions and just get an overview of what it's like to use it. The team at Akiflow just kind of gave me a brief overview and let me ask any of the questions that I possibly had. So I'm happy to share that Akiflow is offering 30% off for the next 12 months for anyone who heads to this link down in the description box below. So thank you to Akiflow for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. So while there are tools out there that will help you out with your small business nowadays, at the same time, I still think that it's important to, point number 4, not overload yourself with so much to do. I would just say that if you were to seriously start running a small business and have this be like your bread and butter, I think that you can only really focus on that as your main thing, and maybe having a social media presence as your supplementary job. I do think that spreading yourself too thin will ultimately impact your small business in a negative way, and the only reason why I feel like I can juggle everything right now is because none of those jobs or projects that I have right now really fully demand my full-time attention. They're all kind of a conglomerate of all side hustles that ultimately make up one hustle. But I feel like if I were to start a small business, I feel like that in itself is a world of so many other types of tasks involved that is going to be your full-time job if you were to take it seriously and try to have that be your primary source of income. And then lastly, my last point, which if you did watch my other video about the story about why my small business failed, this is kind of the main takeaway of it, is that you have to really love it if you are going to start a small business. Ask yourself, is this small business something that you really want to do, or is there something else? Like, going back to what I said, like, just because you know how to run a small business, maybe, is this really something you want to do right now though? Because when I think to myself what I really want to do, there is still a part of me that just has a need to tell stories. I feel like whenever I work on individual pieces of work or products that don't have something deeper behind it, I'm not really as engaged, or I don't really feel as connected to what I create. And maybe there will be a day where all I want to do is just make plushies and calendars and notebooks, who knows, but that is not what I really want right now in July 2024. I also think, of course, during the time I was running my small business, and it technically still is running today, so if you want to check out my Etsy shop, it's also down in the links below if you want to check out what is still remaining on my shop. But of course, I'm not like updating it or maintaining it to the level that I once was when it was at its peak performance. But when it was at its peak, I think I was also spread too thin with so many of my other things like Instagram, YouTube. That's when I first landed my first graphic novel book deal, and I just think that I was not done, and probably still am not done, exploring the different options out there. There's a part of me that still doesn't really feel ready to commit to doing this one thing, and if I were to commit to it, the most type of commitment I can give to it is kind of like a side hustle. So that's why I feel like if you were to run a small business and you want it to be your full-time thing, it can't just stay as a side hustle, and it kind of has to be your baby. And then lastly, my other thing is that I personally realized that as a small business, I prefer to make money through collaborations and larger lump sums of money that you can receive through contracts, campaigns, freelances, or things like that, versus small businesses where you rely on the sales of products is kind of based on what each customer can afford to pay you and if they are willing to buy from you. There's a little bit more reliance on individual sales from people, which to some people that's the way they prefer making money, but then there's other people who prefer, like, you know, that freelance route and you kind of just collect your random lump sums. I kind of just think of it like Animal Crossing when you shake the tree and money just falls down from it, because relying on individual sales really depends on relying on my audience, and I don't always like asking my audience directly for money, but what I can do is work with brands who will offer me money, and whether if my audience wants to try out the products from the sponsorships is really up to them, and it's not out of force. Well, even my Etsy shop isn't really out of force, but at the same time, it's less of a direct retrieval of money from my audience when I do more sponsorships and freelances, and I can continue providing content for all of you for free via funding from other companies, which makes me a little bit more comfortable as a creator, I guess. But with that being said, those are kind of the things I've kind of learned throughout my process of being a small business owner in 2 different ways. So I hope that this video helped inform you about just my experience with one of these paths and why it didn't really work out for me, and maybe what I would do if I were to start it all over again. So thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more videos I made about how to make money as an artist, you can check these out or down in the links below, and I will see you all in the next one. See you later.